For 18 years, my hands composed the silent symphonies that built a $500 million empire. Each fragrance was a story, whispered in notes of sandalwood, bergamot, and impossible-to-source night-blooming jasmine. I was Kinsley Chandler, the master perfumer, the silent soul of Eau de Parfum. Then, in 18 minutes, a man who smelled of spreadsheets and arrogance told me an algorithm could do it better. The boardroom still smelled of old mahogany and beeswax, a scent I'd always found comforting. But that Monday morning at 10 o'clock, it was polluted by a new odor. The thin, metallic scent of manufactured confidence emanating from Julian Croft. He had been our new director of marketing for exactly 6 weeks. 6 weeks of buzzwords, disruptive synergy, and the kind of data-obsessed certainty that makes you want to smash a bottle of priceless rose, absolute just to see the look on their face. "So, Kinsley," he began, his voice slick as the gel in his hair. He clicked a button, and a PowerPoint slide with cold, blocky letters filled the screen behind him. "I've been analyzing the legacy framework of our product development pipeline, and frankly, it's inefficient." Every eye at the long table turned to me. Alastair Finch, our CEO, a man I'd respected for nearly 2 decades, simply watched, his expression unreadable. The rest of the board, people whose bonuses my creations had paid for year after year, shuffled their papers. The only sound was the hum of the air conditioning, a sterile drone against the beating of my heart. "The process you manage, this artisanal approach," Julian continued, the word artisanal dripping with condescension, "is a relic, dinosaur chemistry. We're living in the age of AI, of predictive analytics." He gestured to the screen, which now showed a swirling vortex of colored dots. "Our new AI scent generation system can create trend-forward fragrances 10 times faster and at a fraction of the cost. It analyzes social media trends, sales data, even global sentiment to formulate a product with guaranteed market appeal." He paused for effect, a smug little smile playing on his lips. "A computer can do your job, Kinsley. Optimized, streamlined, and without the overhead." The words hung in the air, sharp and poisonous. 18 years. 18 years of trekking through the jungles of Madagascar for the perfect vanilla orchid, of spending sleepless nights waiting for a single batch of iris root to mature, of understanding the soul of an ingredient. All of it reduced to overhead. I wasn't just a chemist. I was the company's living memory. I was the conservator of the legacy vault. The vault wasn't a server room. It was the heart of Eau de Parfum. A climate-controlled, biometrically sealed chamber in the sub-basement that held our entire history. It contained every master formula I had ever created, and more importantly, the proprietary base notes, the unreplicable foundations that gave our fragrances their signature depth. These weren't just recipes. They were living, breathing organic compounds, sensitive to the slightest change in temperature or humidity. They were our crown jewels, the source of over 80% of our revenue. That $500 million empire was built on the silent, fragrant magic stored behind that 2-foot-thick titanium door. And I was the only person who could open it. My role as conservator wasn't a company title. It was a formal designation, registered with the International Fragrance Association in Geneva. It took 7 years of certifications, of handling rare materials, of proving my absolute dedication to earn that trust. My biometrics, my fingerprint and retinal scan, were the only key. The system was designed this way for a reason. After a minor contamination scare years ago, I had worked with a team of Swiss engineers to design the ultimate failsafe, the stasis lockdown protocol. The vault required my biometric verification every 72 hours to confirm that its delicate contents were being actively monitored. It was a simple, silent check-in. If that window was missed, the protocol would assume the conservator was incapacitated and the vault compromised. It would then begin an irreversible process, slowly replacing all the oxygen in the chamber with pure, inert argon gas, placing the delicate compounds into a state of suspended animation. It was a perfect preservation system. It also meant that once the lockdown began, nothing and no one could get inside for a minimum of 90 days. The process to certify a new conservator with the IFRA, to register new biometrics, would take 6 to 8 months. Minimum. Julian's voice snapped me back to the present. "Therefore," he announced, puffing out his chest, "we'll be transitioning your responsibilities. You'll have the next 2 weeks to transfer your basic notes to our data science team so they can feed them into the algorithm. Consider this your notice." The silence was absolute. Clara, a young perfumer I had been mentoring, looked like she was going to be sick. But no one spoke. No one dared. The man I had once respected, Alistair, simply gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. I stood up slowly, my movements calm and deliberate. I reached for the biometric security key I wore on a chain around my neck, the one that granted me access to the deepest levels of the company. The cool metal felt heavy in my hand. "There's no need for 2 weeks, Julian," I said, my voice as steady and clear as a crystal bell. I placed the key on the polished surface of the mahogany table. It landed with a soft, final click. "I'm sure your AI can analyze what it needs on its own." I didn't explain the stasis lockdown protocol. I didn't talk about the organic instability of the base notes. I didn't mention the 6-month certification process. I had written detailed reports on all of it, reports that Alistair had signed off on every year. They knew, or rather, they had been told. They just hadn't listened. Julian's smug smile widened. "See? This is exactly the kind of outdated, resistant attitude we're trying to eliminate." I almost laughed. I almost told him about the time I'd saved a $20 million contract by identifying a micro-contamination in a batch of jasmine at 3 in the morning. I almost reminded Alistair that his personal fragrance, the one he wore every day, was a custom blend I'd created for his 10th wedding anniversary. But I didn't. I simply picked up my handbag, took one last look at the room full of averted eyes, and walked to the door. "Kinsley," Julian called out, his voice sharp with authority. "You'll need to document all of your handling procedures before you leave the building." I turned at the doorway, meeting his arrogant gaze. "The soul of a fragrance isn't in a procedure, Julian," I said, my voice quiet but carrying across the silent room. "It's in the silence of the legacy vault. Good luck finding it." The door closed behind me with a soft whisper. As I walked past the labs, past the smiling photos from company picnics, past the life I had built for 18 years, I heard Julian's voice drift through the walls. "See, problem solved. We'll have a new data-driven scent portfolio by next quarter." If only he knew. The problem wasn't solved. The problem had just been given a 72-hour countdown. And I, the woman he had just dismissed as a dinosaur, was the only one who knew how to stop the clock. My desk was cleared out in 10 minutes. There wasn't much to pack. A collection of antique glass vials, a worn copy of a botany textbook, and a small, framed photo of the team at a fragrance expo in Grasse 5 years ago. We all looked so happy, so full of passion for the art. Security didn't escort me out. After 18 years, even the corporate machine afforded me that small dignity. The security guard at the front desk, a kind man named Arthur, simply nodded, his eyes full of a sympathy he couldn't voice. "Take care, Kinsley," he said quietly. "You too, Arthur," I replied, handing him my parking pass. "You might want to update your resume." He chuckled nervously, thinking I was joking. I wasn't. Instead of going home, I went back down, not to my lab, but to the sub-basement. My biometric key was deactivated for office access, but not for the vault's antechamber. That was a separate, higher level of clearance. A final check was not only my right, it was my responsibility as conservator. The air grew cooler as the elevator descended. The antechamber was a sterile white room, smelling of nothing but purified air. The thick titanium door to the vault stood before me, silent and imposing. To its right was the biometric control panel. I placed my hand on the cool glass screen. It hummed to life, scanning my palm print. "Welcome, Conservator Chandler." My finger hovered over the options on the screen. One command would transfer my authority to another user, a process that would require them to be present for their own biometric registration. One command would keep the $500 million heart of the company beating. Instead, I navigated to the administrative protocol menu. My fingers moved with a muscle memory built over thousands of hours. I found the command I was looking for. Conservator Access Revoke. User K. Chandler. Effective immediate, I pressed it. The screen flashed red. Warning, no alternate conservator detected in system. Stasis lockdown protocol will initiate in 72:00:00. Proceed. My breath was steady. My hand didn't tremble. "Yes," I whispered, pressing the confirmation button. Warning, International Fragrance Association transition, Form C7 not detected in system. Proceeding without this documentation is a violation of IFRA Protocol 11.3. Proceed, they had the documentation. It was in the reports Alistair never read. "Yes." Final warning, this action is irreversible without formal IFRA recertification. Estimated recertification time, 180 to 240 days. All contents will be sealed under inert argon gas for a minimum of 90 days. Proceed? My finger didn't hesitate. Yes. The screen flashed once, a brilliant white. Then the normal welcome screen returned, but with one crucial difference. The countdown timer was active in the top right corner. 71, 58, 42. I leaned back, letting out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. It was done. I was now just a visitor. My biometrics were orphaned, my authority erased. Even if I wanted to help them, beg them to let me fix it, I couldn't. The system was now listening only to the relentless march of its own internal clock. I took the elevator back up, walked out of the building for the final time, and drove home. My own lab, a smaller, more intimate version of my workspace at Aura, was waiting for me. It was my sanctuary, filled with the scent of possibility. I sat down not at my workbench, but at my computer. There was one more piece to put in place. I opened my personal email account and composed a message to Dr. Alina Varga, the head of the certification board at the IFRA headquarters in Geneva. Dear Dr. Varga, as per IFRA Regulation 4.5, I am notifying you that my role as primary conservator for the Aura de Parfum Legacy Vault has been terminated, effective today. I have properly revoked my access credentials as required by protocol. Please note that as of this notification, Aura de Parfum has not designated a replacement conservator per your guidelines. I trust they will follow the appropriate procedures for the transition. Best regards, Kinsley Chandler, former conservator, Aura de Parfum. I hit send. Elena would read that first thing in the morning in Switzerland. She was a stickler for rules. The flag on Aura de Parfum's file would be immediate and bright red. The setup was complete. Now all I had to do was wait for gravity to do its work. The first tremors arrived the next morning via text from Clara, my former mentee. She was heartbroken, but loyal. He brought in 2 data scientists. They look like they've never smelled a real flower in their lives. He's telling them to have the AI create the new fragrance for Lyra by tomorrow. I could picture it perfectly. The sterile lab, the whirring computers, 2 young men staring at lines of code, trying to replicate a sunset. By Tuesday afternoon, the predictable result. Julian is furious. The AI sample smells awful, like burnt sugar and cleaning fluid. He just keeps yelling, add more synthetic vanilla. I almost felt sorry for them. Almost, art cannot be brute forced. At 3 o'clock, the first real consequence. Lyra's agent just emailed. He said, and I quote, "This smells like an accident at a detergent factory. Lyra will not be the face of this product." They're threatening to pull out of the contract. Panic, I knew, would be starting to set in. Julian's data-driven utopia was crumbling. He would be looking for a scapegoat, but his real problem was locked behind a titanium door. The dam broke at 5:23 p.m. My phone buzzed with a frantic series of texts from Clara. Julian wants one of your base notes from the vault to fix the AI's mess. The ambergris 7 formula, he thinks he can just add it in. I told him we can't get in. He doesn't believe me. He made me pull up the vault schematics. I showed him the documentation. The stasis lockdown protocol. A pause, then the final frantic text. Kinsley, he finally gets it. He's gone completely pale. I showed him the countdown timer on the security feed. He asked me how to stop it. I told him only you could have, but it's too late. The process is irreversible. What have you done? No, what have they done? There are 38 hours, 22 minutes, and 15 seconds until the heart of Aura de Parfum goes silent. For good. I poured myself a glass of wine, a deep, complex Bordeaux that smelled of earth and black cherries. Outside my window, the city hummed along, oblivious. But I knew that across town, in a silent sub-basement, a clock was ticking, counting down to the moment when a $500 million company would learn the difference between the price of an employee and the value of an artist. Part III Wednesday morning brought chaos, delivered to me through Clara's increasingly desperate texts. Alastair Finch, the CEO, had returned from his business trip in London, flying back on the red eye after the alerts about Lyra's contract breach started flooding his phone. Alastair is here. He's been screaming at Julian for an hour. I can hear it through the walls. The problem was no longer just about a bad fragrance. It was a catastrophic failure of production. The entire spring line, the scents that accounted for 40% of their annual revenue, were all based on formulas stored in the vault. Without the master formulas and the base notes, they couldn't produce a single bottle. They were a fragrance house that had lost its sense of smell. By 8 a.m., their legal counsel, a sharp woman named Evelyn Reed, had joined the fray. It took her less than 15 minutes to grasp the full, horrifying scope of the disaster. Evelyn just asked Julian, "You fired the only person who could access our most critical assets." Her voice was deadly quiet. Julian tried to defend himself, saying I was redundant. Evelyn shot back, "Redundancy is having a backup plan. What you have is a 9-figure liability." The number hung in the air, $500 million, the total value of the intellectual property that was about to be sealed away for months, possibly forever. Meanwhile, in Geneva, my email had done its work. Dr. Varga had escalated the issue. By 9 a.m., Aura de Parfum had received a formal notice from the IFRA requesting immediate confirmation of their new designated conservator. A conservator that didn't exist, couldn't exist, not for at least 6 months. Clara, to her credit, had spent the entire night trying to find a solution. She had read every piece of my documentation, trying to find a loophole. She discovered the truth: there were none. The vault's security wasn't just digital, it was physical, biological. It was linked to me, my very essence. No automation, no substitution, no delegation. At 10:15 a.m., Lyra's management team moved from threats to action. They officially terminated the $50 million endorsement contract, citing breach of contract. The news hit the internal servers like a shockwave. The first call came at 11:23 a.m. Alistair. I let it go to voicemail. The second, a minute later, was Evelyn. Voicemail. Then a name I hadn't expected, the chairman of the board himself. Voicemail. I wasn't being petty. Okay, maybe a little. I was at a Napa Valley vineyard, attending a seminar on the terroir of scent extraction from different soil types. They were offering me a consulting position to help them create a new line of wine-inspired perfumes. A new beginning. By 2 p.m., the dam finally cracked. The IFRA, having received no response about a new conservator, had placed Aura de Parfum on a compliance watch list, a move that would be seen by every major distributor and retailer in the world. Their reputation was bleeding out. Evelyn Reed, the lawyer, tried one last desperate gambit. She contacted the IFRA directly, requesting an emergency conservator transfer. The response was swift and brutal. Emergency transfers require the current conservator's biometric authorization to initiate. Please have Ms. Chandler submit Form IFRA C7 with her biometric verification. It was the perfect catch-22, a loop I had designed myself, not out of malice, but out of a profound respect for the sanctity of the art. They needed me to log in with my biometrics to formally transfer authority, but my credentials had already been revoked. By me. Legally, properly, and completely. The final text from Clara that day came at 4:30. Julian's been fired. Security is packing his desk. But it doesn't matter, does it? Firing him doesn't stop the clock. She was right. This was never just about Julian. This was about consequences, about the price of dismissing expertise, of confusing quiet dedication with a replaceable cog in a machine. They had wanted to see if a machine could do my job. In just under 12 hours, they would have their answer. I woke at 3 a.m. on Thursday. Not from anxiety, but from habit. This was the hour I used to do my most creative work when the world was quiet and the sense seemed to speak more clearly. My laptop showed the news I'd been expecting. Industry blogs were buzzing. Crisis at Aura de Parfum, read one headline. Fragrance giant halts production amidst rumors of IP meltdown, read another. None of them had the real story. Not yet. At 6 a.m. sharp, I composed a second email to Dr. Varga at the IFRA. Subject: Clarification on Aura de Parfum situation. Dear Dr. Varga, to prevent any misconceptions, I want to clarify that I have not sabotaged, hacked, or otherwise maliciously interfered with Aura de Parfum systems. I properly revoked my conservator credentials following my termination, as required by IFRA protocol. The stasis lockdown protocol is functioning exactly as designed and documented. The current situation results from their failure to ensure proper conservator succession before terminating my position. I am not seeking reinstatement and have already accepted a new position elsewhere. This email is solely for your records. Regards, Kinsley Chandler. Elena replied within minutes. Understood, Ms. Chandler. For the record, you followed protocol perfectly. What happens next is not your responsibility. That bureaucratic absolution felt like vindication. I wasn't a disgruntled employee. I was a professional who had followed the rules while everyone else had ignored them. At 11:50 a.m. my phone rang. It was Alistair. This time I answered. Kinsley, his voice was a wreck frayed with exhaustion and despair. Please don't hang up. I'm listening, Alistair, I said, my voice calm. We need you. I was wrong. We were all wrong. What do you want? Name it. Your old job back, a raise, a seat on the board, anything. I wanted respect, Alistair, I said simply. I wanted 18 years of my life's work to mean more than a line item on a budget. That window has closed. His breathing was ragged. There has to be a way, some override. I paused, looking at the countdown timer I had open on my laptop. 000417. There is one possibility, I said slowly. It's a long shot. The emergency provision in IFRA Regulation 7b, it's for when a conservator becomes medically incapacitated. Evelyn could argue that being terminated without a succession plan constitutes a form of professional incapacitation induced by the company. It's a legal stretch, but it's all you have. What do you need us to do? He asked, hope creeping into his voice. You'll need my final biometric scan from the security log on Monday morning. And you'll need a new conservator with at least a level 2 IFRA certification ready to take over immediately. Clara, he breathed, she just got her certification last month. Then you have 4 minutes to get Evelyn on a video call with Geneva and make the legal argument of her life. Good luck, Alistair. Kinsley, wait, I'm so sorry. I know, I said, and I meant it. But sorry doesn't unlock a titanium door. I hung up. At exactly 11:58 a.m., the timer hit 0. Across the city, I knew the great door was sealing shut. The pumps would be silently filling the chamber with argon, preserving my life's work. My silent sonatas put to sleep. 30 seconds later, my phone buzzed, a text from Clara. They did it. IFRA approved the emergency provision. I'm the interim conservator. The lockdown stopped with seconds to spare. You saved us. No, I texted back. I gave you the key. You all saved yourselves. Barely. The aftermath was brutal. Aura de Parfum survived, but they were wounded. They lost the Lyra contract and 2 others, a permanent loss of nearly $80 million in revenue. Their stock plummeted 28%. The cost of their arrogance had been calculated by the market, and it was steep. 3 months later, I sat in my new sunlit workshop in Napa Valley. My own brand, Chandler Apotheca, was preparing to launch its first fragrance. It was called Sonata No. 1, a scent of earth, rain, and new beginnings. Alistair had made Clara the head of a new creative council, ensuring the artists would always have a voice. Julian Croft was facing a lawsuit for attempting to sell company data. They were learning, the hard way. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Tommy, the former intern, now a junior system administrator at Northbridge. Ms. Dawson, I just wanted you to know I read all your documentation, every line. You saved us even after they threw you away. That's the kind of professional I want to be. I smiled and typed back. Then remember this, document everything, value yourself, and never, ever let them call you redundant. This was never about revenge. It was about proof. Proof that expertise matters. That passion has value. That the people who quietly build the soul of a company deserve more than a pink slip and a smug dismissal. Some might call what happened a crisis. I call it a lesson. When you build your castle on the soul of an artist and then try to kick them out, don't be surprised when the whole thing falls silent. The only surprise is that they were surprised at all.